He just keeps rallying and rallying and rallying and rallying, and he's making time now. He's going to stop. He's going to make time to meet with Mark Longo, the saddened and abused, you might say, fellow from New York whose squirrel was killed by the New York State authorities. Also the raccoon. Don't forget about Fred the raccoon. Everyone, we all know about the squirrel, but we don't want to forget about the raccoon too, because raccoon lives matter. What's up? This is Mark Kaye Saves the Republic special Sunday edition, and man, Donald Trump has been rallying. It seems like nonstop. I was just pulling clips from his rally earlier today in Lititz, Pennsylvania. And now he's already at a rally in Kinston, North Carolina, which, you know, why don't we listen in for just a second? He's already
doing really well. Amazing the way they went out. And I'll tell you something about North Carolina. So I was one of the first people down, maybe the first person. I followed him, and I followed that sucker storm. I followed it. But then I said, I better let them just get their stuff. And I figured FEMA would do a good job. They did a horrible job under the auspices of these two people. I got to say these two people, and you know, right now I'm saying, who the hell's running the country? Nobody even knows. Can you imagine President Xi of China or Putin or anybody they want to call, they say, who the hell's running that country? It's the first time we have a country where we don't even know who is running it. Nobody knows. Let's call the United States. Who do we speak to? Most of them say Donald Trump. Just call Donald Trump. You know? That's what they're saying. But we're going to bring back the American dream. It's going to be brought back at the highest level. And this is all you have to know. Kamala broke it, and I will fix it, and it'll go quickly.
There you go. All right. So Donald Trump, he's playing the hits and he's playing to these crowds and he's going over and over again. And I don't know where he gets the stamina. I don't know where he gets. I do know where he gets the stamina. I do know where he gets the drive. He wants to win. He wants to win. He knows he has to win. He knows for us and for the country and for his kids and for his grandkids, he knows that winning is the only option on Tuesday, and winning whatever it takes. We got to win no matter what. We got to make sure that people are out voting. We got to make sure that you're out voting. We got to make sure that you're dragging other people out to vote. We have to make sure that wherever there are votes to be had, they are cast, and they are cast for Donald Trump. Otherwise, what's going to happen in the country is just going to be god awful. And we'll check back in with President Trump here in just a minute. There is an update, by the way, an update to the Peanut the Squirrel story. And this is a story that we talked about yesterday at length. The Peanut the Squirrel story is from New York State, where a guy named Mark Longo, and we talked about Mark Longo yesterday. He had a rescue, an animal rescue, and he rescued an orphan squirrel named Peanut. He brought him in, tried to rehabilitate him. As we dig deeper into the story, we find out that he did try to get him back out into the wild with other squirrels and rodents and animals. But when these animals are raised in the home, or when they're orphaned, they don't have the street smarts, if you will, or the squirrel smarts. I don't know what you would call them. The woods smarts. What do you call them? Tree smarts, whatever it is. It doesn't matter. What happens is you have to go in and you have to keep these animals inside. Otherwise, they're going to get damaged. And Peanut the squirrel was released into the wild. He showed back up injured because he didn't know how to fend for himself. So they just adopted him. And for 7 years, they turned him into an internet sensation. He had like 1 million followers on TikTok, 500,000 followers on Instagram. People were following the life of this squirrel. He built his entire animal rescue around it, Peanut's animal rescue farm. And he had this friend, of course, the raccoon named Fred, who was in a similar situation. But here's the update. Here's the update. We just got this update from Peanut the Squirrel. Mark Longo posted on his X feed, "We are going to meet Donald Trump soon." So Donald Trump has scheduled a meeting with Mark Longo. Mark Longo will be meeting with Donald Trump. He says, "Thank you for your continued support. Spread the word. Your government murdered us." And this is what the Democrats didn't want. This is what the Democrats were trying to avoid. This is what the Democrats were thinking, oh man, that's the last thing we need is some other hubbub about animals. Remember, we already lived through, they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats, they're eating the pets of the people who live there. That was the illegal immigrant. That was bad enough. It was bad enough when Kamala Harris and Joe Biden were letting illegal immigrants from Haiti into the country, bringing them up to Ohio, where they were eating dogs, cats, ducks. They were eating the geese in the park. They were doing all these horrible things. And now Even worse, you've got the United States government agencies. You've got New York State agencies who are going into people's private homes, seizing the pets, seizing the squirrels, seizing the raccoons, seizing the pets of the people who live there, and then they take them off and then they execute them for no good reason. And Donald Trump's like, we're not going to do that anymore. We've had enough of that. That's not how this country works. So what we're going to do is we're going to meet with Mark Longo. And I don't know what they're going to talk about. I don't know how that meeting's going to go. I do know this, that if Mark Longo, owner of Peanut the Squirrel and Fred the Raccoon, if they show up on stage with real Donald Trump anytime between now and Election Day, that's going to be a big problem. That's going to be a big problem for Kamala Harris, despite what the fake, phony Iowa polls are telling everybody. Despite what you hear in the Iowa or the Des Moines Register, that poll today, I did a whole video on that, so I'm not going to touch on it too much. I'll get into it a little bit later on. But that poll today is just a debacle. And the more and more I think about it, the worse I believe it is for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. Let's check back in with Donald Trump here for just a minute and see what he's up to in Kinston, North Carolina.
North Carolina was devastated. And yet, when I said when it was time to start thinking, we still have to think about this election, I said, I've just seen some of the worst devastation that I've seen them all, because I used to go and follow the tornadoes, and we've seen a lot of bad things. But you had houses that were ripped apart. The foundations were ripped out of the ground. You had things that you just don't see. No trees for 2 miles. I mean, big, giant trees were ripped right out of the ground and floated down in rivers that didn't exist. Areas that never saw water before became lakes and rivers. And I said, it's largely Trump areas that were hit, meaning people that like Trump, right? They're largely Trump. I said, the amazing thing is that we're going to have a problem, and I want them to just be safe. I don't want them to come back, and they don't have to register. They don't have to vote. So people lost their homes. A lot of people were missing and not found, as you know. A lot of people died. Quite a few people died. And you had people losing their loved ones. And I figured, and I said to my people, I can't imagine more than 50% of what had voted in the past. I mean, I looked at areas that were barren, they were gone, they were just devastated.
Yeah, so Donald Trump talking about the areas in North Carolina that were devastated by Hurricane Helene, and he's talking about how these people, he just wanted them to get back to normally, wanted them to get back to their homes, and there is an election going on, and it's interesting. He said it seems like it's Trump areas, conservative areas where you have a lot of Trump voters, a lot of people who would vote red, a lot of those folks who would be MAGA. That's where the areas were that were hit. And he's not saying, look, I mean, maybe he's saying they sent the hurricane there on purpose, but it looks like he could also just be saying, we need to make sure that these people get a chance to vote. We need to make sure that these people get their ballots. And the interesting thing about all of this is that Kamala Harris, days before the election, already abandoned North Carolina. It's now the second time she's abandoned North Carolina. She abandoned North Carolina when the hurricane hit, and she's just abandoned North Carolina as part of the campaign. Donald Trump is campaigning in a state that, according to Kamala Harris, he's already won. She took it off the table. She took whatever money she had left, a few $1 million, to spend on advertising in North Carolina. She looked at the polls. She looked at the internals. She saw the enthusiasm for Donald Trump, and she said, I'm leaving. I'm taking my money. I'm putting it in Pennsylvania. I'm putting it in Michigan. I'm putting it in Wisconsin. I'm putting it wherever I need to put it. And that's basically game over for North Carolina. It goes red. It's Donald Trump's state. And you have to imagine that the mismanagement of FEMA and the mismanagement of the hurricane is a big reason why that happened. It's a big reason why you have now all of these North Carolina voters that are projected to support Donald Trump. All of these North Carolina voters who are projected to be supporting the former president of the United States here in this upcoming election. Now, the other thing that's interesting is that Kamala Harris has also pulled her money from Nevada, a state that the Democrats were supposedly going to win. The Democrats, it seemed, were poised to, they were leading in Nevada for a very long time, but now Kamala Harris has taken a look at Nevada. She's taken a look at the polls in Nevada, and her people have said there's no reason spending any more money in Nevada. It's done. It's over with. So that's another swing state that Donald Trump can basically just chalk up and put in his column. if you look at the big polls today, it seems like Donald Trump is set to win every single swing state. There were polls that were coming out that have Donald Trump winning Georgia, North Carolina, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Nevada, Arizona. And with all of that, of course, we can chalk up a Trump victory as long as there aren't too many shenanigans. But Mark Longo, back to him, he's very excited that he's meeting with Donald Trump because his squirrel was taken by the government. And if you didn't know about government intervention, if you didn't know about how harsh the government treated its citizens, if you weren't aware about how the government sticks its claws and fangs into every ounce of everybody's business, if you didn't know about Elon Musk wanting to reduce the size of the government and work for the Department of Government Efficiency, which he's pledged to start with Donald Trump, to limit the size and scope and power of the federal government on every aspect, if you didn't know about that, now you do. This squirrel story, this seemingly tragic story of this man and his pets, it has shed light on one of the biggest things that Donald Trump and Elon Musk are trying to battle in this particular election, and that is the interference of the government in all aspects of people's lives. So, it's bad that it's a sad thing. It's a sad day for squirrels and raccoon lovers everywhere, but at the same time, it is another valuable lesson. It's a powerful lesson. And if things go right on Tuesday, Peanut the squirrel, like we said yesterday, will not have died in vain. He also thanked Elon Musk because Elon Musk, with his hundreds of millions of followers on X, posted this tribute video. I won't play the music, but this was a tribute video that went viral yesterday with Peanut and Mark Longo at the happier days. These were some of their highlights. Peanut standing on his head while he was brushing his teeth. I guess that was a popular video. Peanut flying through the air. They ate a lot of waffles together. They were big waffle lovers. So, that's kind of anyway, Elon Musk posted this video and brought more attention to this whole thing. And even boosted the what do you call it? The GoFundMe. The GoFundMe right now, let me just pull this up quickly so that we can, I haven't checked on it in a while. The GoFundMe is at, get this, $126,000. $126,000. And this is, I imagine, for the NYSDEC reform. I imagine there'll be lawsuits. I imagine they're going to be suing. There's a $200,000 goal, and they are 63% of the way there. And I have to imagine with Elon's support and Donald Trump's support, they will definitely get there. This is also for Peanut's farm, Peanut's Freedom Farm. They want to make sure that they can continue Peanut's Freedom Farm now that Peanut is no longer with us. So that's what's going on the Peanut side of things. As far as the election itself, look, there's a lot of stuff that people are taking for granted. And we've been talking about the polls for a very long time. We've been talking about the poly market averages. We've been talking about Kalshi. We've been talking about all of these different things that affect the election. We've been talking about the enthusiasm. And if you look at the election, there's still concern by a lot of folks that this election will not necessarily be on the up and up. And people have been talking. I was watching Steve Bannon, freshly out of prison, doing a press conference the other day. He was being peppered with questions for hours about it, about election integrity. How do we know that Pennsylvania is secure? How do we know that corruption does not exist? We don't. There is corruption in all aspects of the election process. There's fraud. In every election has fraud. And that's just a fact. I mean, there's lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit. There's already fraud in this election, as reported on by Florida Senator Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio was on, I want to say it was CBS. It was one of those morning shows this morning. And he told a story about a Chinese national who, get this, already voted in the election illegally.
Look, in the state of Michigan, we know now, and this is not me making it up, I can't believe it hasn't received more coverage, a Chinese national registered to vote and voted. And now he's being charged for doing that, but guess what? His ballot's going to count. We know at least one non-citizen's ballot is going to count in Michigan because they don't know which ballot is and they can't retrieve it. These are facts. Right. Now, whether that's widespread or not, I hope not, but these are things that are happening and they need to be watched at. As far as foreign adversaries, sure. I mean, Iran wants to kill Donald Trump. Iran, this has been fully documented. They are trying to kill Donald Trump. You talk about violent rhetoric. He's the only candidate in this race, and not because I wish this on anybody else, who's had not one but two assassination attempts against his life.
Right.
So of course we're all concerned about it.
Right. In terms of the case you talked about in Michigan, we have tracked that. The Secretary of State of that state has actually brought charges, has made that public. That individual may actually be deported. May actually be deported because there are laws in this country that punish people when they are illegal and they try to vote in federal elections. That 19-year-old is going to face some consequences.
He is, and he's going to, but his vote still counts. His vote will still be counted.
Understood.
Look at that. She had no answer. No, he'll be charged, but his vote's going to count. No, he'll be prosecuted. His vote's going to count, though. He may actually be deported, Senator Rubio, yes, but his vote will count. If 100,000 foreign nationals come in here and cast ballots in Michigan and they all get counted and then those people get charged and deported, guess what? Their votes still count. CBS News doesn't seem to care about that. They're like, oh, well, he broke the law. He voted for, we don't even know who, but he voted for somebody, and that vote's going to count. But at least we're going to deport him. Should have deported him sooner. That's what Donald Trump wants to do. When it comes to the violent rhetoric, which is the other thing, they keep talking about Donald Trump ramping up violent rhetoric. First, they said he wanted to execute Liz Cheney, which was a lie. Then they said he wanted to do something with report. He wanted to shoot the media or something today. He said there if an assassin shot through the media section, he'd be fine with it. And they turned that on. Donald Trump wants to shoot the media. Also a lie. When it comes to violent rhetoric, Marco Rubio is 100% right. The only person in this race that we know of who has had not one, but two assassination attempts on their life and has multiple other assassination teams from foreign countries coming into this country to try to take him out is Donald Trump. And Caroline Leavitt was on another one of these news shows, I'm not sure which one, and she mentioned that as well.
You want to talk about violence against political opponents? Let's talk about the fact that Democrats have been labeling President Trump a threat to democracy for the better half of 10 years. Let's talk about how they have compared him to Hitler, one of the worst mass murderers in the history of the world, and that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden weaponized the court system and the justice system in this country against Donald Trump in an attempt to imprison him. He sat through a courthouse for 7 weeks this past year, and the Democrats were hoping he would go to jail for it. That is real political violence that has led to 2 heinous assassination attempts on President Trump's life that, by the grace of God, he was able to escape, and he is here with us today. So yes, President Trump knows a little bit about political violence because he's experienced it himself. And talking about the tragic realities of war that Liz Cheney and her father, Dick Cheney, have got this country into is not political violence. It's talking about the reality of the foreign conflicts that the Washington, D.C. establishment have sold out young Americans to for decades.
Yet, of course, after those attempted assassination attempts on the former president's life, his opponents reached out to him and said they do not accept political violence. That has been a key difference. I do want to play you.
No, please. His opponents are saying to this very day the same rhetoric that led to those 2 assassination attempts. The second attempted assassin on President Trump's life echoed the sentiment that President Trump is a threat to democracy. And if you're a deranged lunatic and you're mentally ill, you will believe that lie. And yes, you will take political violence like we have seen in 2 instances against President Trump. Last week, Tim Walz and Kamala Harris said that everyone who showed up to President Trump's rally at Madison Square Garden was a Nazi. That's despicable, dangerous, divisive rhetoric that is spewed by the Democrat Party every single day. And I am so sick and tired of the media pointing the finger at Donald Trump and saying that he is sowing division in this country. He is not. The media is for pushing hoaxes like the one that you all pushed today, and the Democrat Party is for pushing lies about him. But the good news is Americans don't buy it. And that's why today in 2024, President Trump is more popular than he has been since 2016 because people don't trust the media and they're not buying the Harris campaign's closing argument that he's some great threat to our democracy because they lived under him for 4 years as president and our democracy and our country was stronger than it is today.
Preach, girlfriend. That's it, by the way, she just had a baby. Isn't that crazy? And that was, I don't know if it was the hormones or whatnot, but that was fantastic. That's exactly, and the weakness of these media people trying to explain away the Democrat Party's reaction. The Democrat rhetoric has caused not one, but 2 assassination attempts on Donald Trump's life. She's 100% accurate about that. Donald Trump was shot at a rally. Not even an attempt. He was shot in the head. His ear bled. He was taken to the emergency room. It was this close to puncturing his skull. That hasn't happened in a very long time, and the media should be more concerned about that. What do? They blame Donald Trump. And when you hear her say, in a nutshell, hey, the left is the reason why there are attacks on Donald Trump's life. The left is the reason why there's crazy people out there that want to kill him, and Iran wants to kill him, and everyone else wants to kill him. And your answer is all of his opponents reached out and said, we condemn political violence? No, they don't. They don't condemn political violence. They go out and they call everybody Nazis and they call everybody garbage. And that's how we got to this contentious place where we are today. That's why we have such violent rhetoric and vitriolic rhetoric. It's not because of Donald Trump. You know what it is? It's also because they make crap up. Like when they made up the thing about Donald Trump wanting to execute Liz Cheney, they are creating political violence where there isn't any, and then they are reporting on it, and they are propagandizing it. And it is evil. And that's another one of the reasons why we've got to vote for Donald Trump, because Donald Trump can do Donald Trump things as president, and we can see a purge of this media bastardization, if you will. We need more people like Caroline Leavitt, and we're not going to get them if Donald Trump's not president. We need more people like Marco Rubio. We need the media to be taken to task. We need the media to be shown what's up. We need people to go out there and say, you have Chinese nationals breaking the law, and no matter how you try, you need to report on it, and you need to report on it truthfully, and not spin it like, oh, he'll be deported. His vote won't be. He gets sent back to China. His vote stays in Michigan. How's that fair? Donald Trump's spewing political violence? No, he's not. He's the victim of political violence. Where's the reporting on that? It's ridiculous. It all is ridiculous, and that's why we need to make sure that we are doing everything we can to make sure that Donald Trump wins. And these polls, man, it's so stupid. It's this Iowa poll. So the Iowa Des Moines stupid paper. I don't even know. Sorry, I forget what it's called. It's not called the Iowa Des Moines stupid paper. It's called something else, but I'll find it here. Hang on one second. I had it just a minute ago. The Iowa Des Moines stupid paper is, they reported that Kamala Harris, hang on, I got it right here. That Kamala Harris was leading Donald Trump 47-44, I think it was. I think that's right. Kamala Harris was leading Donald Trump 47-44 in this Iowa stupid paper poll. And the Iowa stupid paper poll, it was basically Democrats. And I have it here. Here we go. Let me show you this. Here we go. The Des Moines Sunday Register is the actual name of the paper. And it says Harris edges Trump 47% to 44 among likely Iowa voters. This is the biggest, steamiest pile of cow dung I've ever seen in my life. And in Iowa, they know a lot about steaming piles of cow dung because they have a lot of farms and things there. Here, look at this. Here's some of the questions that they asked. Likely voters in Iowa who said their preferred candidate was Kamala Harris were asked, which one of the following have you been thinking about most in your decision to support Kamala Harris? Number one, the future of democracy. You know what this tells me? This tells me that if 51% of people polled in Iowa said their biggest concern in this election, and the reason they're voting for Kamala Harris is because of the future of democracy, I believe that this poll skewed hard left, because only idiots on the hard left are concerned about the future of democracy. Only people on the hard left are buying into the narrative that the media is pushing and that Kamala Harris is pushing and that the Democrats are pushing, that Donald Trump wants to shred the Constitution and he wants to get rid of it all. And Donald Trump is somehow the threat to democracy when he's been putting his life on the line to protect it. This republic is in danger, and Donald Trump is the only one that is standing in the way. The Democrats are the ones who are destroying your freedom of speech. The Democrats are the ones who are destroying your freedom to peaceably assemble. The Democrats are the one who are illegally searching and seizing your squirrels. Donald Trump protects against that. The Democrats are the ones who want to take your guns away. Kamala Harris said it. Beto O'Rourke said he was going to come door to door. There are so many Democrats that have tried over and over again, despite the fact that Tim Walz fumbled with the shotgun in his Elmer Fudd costume. Despite the fact that they have camouflage hats with safety orange hairs walls, that doesn't mean that they're not going to take your guns. That means that they're trying to pretend that they're not going to take your guns so they could get elected. And then when they get elected, you know what they're going to do? They're going to come and take your guns. No guns, no squirrels, no raccoons, no freedom to peaceably assemble, no freedom of speech. No, forget about going back on X. X will be shuttered. Elon Musk will be gone. X will be down. There will be no other place for you to exercise your free speech or to speak out against the government if Kamala Harris should win somehow. She's not gonna, because, like I said, there's other polls that show Donald Trump winning handily. You really got to look at you got to really stop looking at the polls. First of all, you got to go out and vote. Nothing matters if you don't vote. So if you haven't yet voted, make sure you vote on Tuesday. If you can still early vote. That's fantastic. But really, you got to look around the polls. You've got to see where the voice of the people and where the sentiment is. And the sentiment is not on, as the Iowa stupid paper would make you think, the future of democracy. Oh, and abortion, by the way. It's the 73% of the poll, 73% of the problems these people face are the future of democracy and abortion. That's a far left-leaning poll. Also, they didn't release the crosstabs or let you know which party affiliation the people they polled were with. So clearly, we know that this is a left-leaning Democrat poll. It's not a poll. It's propaganda. It's content, as our buddy Mark Mitchell said. It's a psyop. They're trying to convince Donald Trump that he's in hot water in Iowa. So maybe he takes some of the money away from Pennsylvania and spends it in Iowa to save a state that he thought he was already going to win. He's going to win it. There's no way Donald Trump doesn't win Iowa. He's the only president, Republican president, to win Iowa by more than 50% in back-to-back elections. George Bush lost Iowa in 2000. George Bush won Iowa by 0.07%. I'm sorry, 0.7% in 2004. Then Barack Obama won it twice. And then Donald Trump came along and won it by 51% and 53%. They love Donald Trump in Iowa. Donald Trump loves Iowa. Iowa's fine. Pennsylvania, on the other hand, is not fine. Pennsylvania is a problem. Not a problem for Donald Trump. It's a problem for Kamala Harris. And we know that because John Fetterwoman was on television talking about how, I think this was CNN, he was discussing on CNN how Kamala Harris cannot win Pennsylvania.
And I've been saying this, whether it was Biden or then became Harris, I said it's going to be very close. And Trump definitely has a connection with voters here in Pennsylvania, and that's why it's going to be close.
Oh, Donald Trump, he's been saying all along, he knows the people better than anyone. He's one of them. I mean, like he's walking around in his sweatshirt talking to union workers. He knows that they like Donald Trump. He knows they don't like Kamala Harris. And he said it's going to be really close. That means it's not going to be close at all, that Donald Trump's going to win. Kamala Harris did this Saturday Night Live skit yesterday, which I don't want to play too much of because of copyright infringement. Also, she ripped off this idea from Donald Trump, who did the same exact skit in 2015 with Jimmy Fallon. But listen to what she said at the very end.
I'm going to vote for us. Great. Any chance you are registered in Pennsylvania? Nope, I am not.
Yeah, that's right. The Pennsylvania joke is no joke. First of all, it's not funny. But the Pennsylvania joke at the end of that Saturday Night Live skit, that is no joke. That is planned. That is perpetrated. That is something that that's free advertising for them. And by the way, NBC's in a lot of hot water for this. That is free advertising from them. They went on there and they said, look, we want to come in on and we want to do this last minute bit on Saturday Night Live because we're trailing and we're trailing bad and we need some help. And B, what happened after that is they went on there and said, look, we need to throw in a joke about Pennsylvania because we need to reach people in Pennsylvania. We need to make sure that Pennsylvania voters know we've got to have them. We have to have them. If we don't have them, then we are not going to be president of the United States. And that's exactly why this skit went off the way that it did. Now, there's some issues. Because there is something called the equal time law. And the equal time law basically works like this. If you have a political candidate on during an election season, you have to open up and offer equal time to every other political candidate. It's not necessarily the show, but it's the network. For example, when I was on the radio, if I had a candidate on during an election and they talked about the election or we talked about the poll, anything like during a live election season, if I had a candidate on, then the network that I was on, meaning the radio station, would have to offer equal time to the other candidates. Not necessarily on my show, but somewhere else. Now, this is a problem because the Associated Press and everyone else is now reporting, The Independent. The Independent reported back in October that SNL Here it is right here. Fox News has it. SNL. Lorne Michaels, the producer, said there will be no Trump or Harris cameos this season and cited the equal time provision. Lorne Michaels said, you can't bring the actual people who are running on because of election laws and the equal time provisions. So back in October the 1st, he said, we're not going to do it. There's going to be no Trump on Saturday Night Live. There's going to be no Kamala Harris on Saturday Night Live. There's going to be no Jill Stein on Saturday. None of these people are going to be on Saturday Night Live because he didn't want to have to offer equal time. And I imagine the lawyers came in and said something to him about that. Well, fast forward to 2 days before the election, and things have changed. And now all of a sudden, Lorne Michaels or NBC or whomever is allowing Kamala Harris to come on, and they are risking whatever problems they're going to have with the FCC. They're risking whatever violations of the equal time law they're going to have. They're risking whatever fines they may have to pay, because that's at the FCC. That's what they do. They'll fine you. If you ever saw what's Howard Stern's Private Parts, or if you ever listen to Rush Limbaugh, you know about the FCC fines. I've had some experience with that myself. And what they do is they will fine you. And NBC probably had some powwow with the DNC and Kamala's campaign, and they said, look, we're in dire straits. We need something to jumpstart this campaign. We need Kamala to come on. We need to do that bit that Donald Trump did, bring in Maya Rudolph. We'll make a joke about Pennsylvania. We're going to lose. And if we lose, you know what happens. Donald Trump goes into the White House and he attacks NBC News. And he attacks CBS. He's already suing CBS for the Frankenstein interview they did with Kamala Harris, where they cut and pasted and sewed together the perfect answer for their imperfect questions. And NBC said, fine. They weighed the options, they weighed the pros and cons, and maybe they even got some money from somebody to cover the costs of any fines that may pop up. Although I don't think there will be, because right now the FCC is in Democrat control. But they did it. They threw her on there. And this was the first thing people said. It's like they forgot that Lorne Michaels said this. They didn't Google anything about SNL. They didn't figure out, well, you know what? 2 months ago, the producer said, we're not going to have anybody on. And then all of a sudden, 2 days before, we have them on. It's just blatant. The other thing is, it's really a bad move. I mean, think about this. I don't know anybody that watches Saturday Night Live. I only saw the clip because I watched it on YouTube after the fact. I don't know anyone who stays up late on Saturday night. And if they're up, I don't know if they're watching Saturday Night Live. I imagine they're watching something on Netflix, or they're watching, some other, Hulu. I mean, there's so many different things you could watch, better things that you could watch. You could go on YouTube and you could live stream past episodes of Mark Kaye Saves the Republic, or videos that I've created. Anything at all is better than watching Saturday Night Live. So I don't know what they're doing, but that's neither here nor there. The Kamala Harris campaign had a choice. They were asked by Joe Rogan multiple times to appear. They said, please, we can't come to you, but you can come to us. You can come to our studio. We'd like to sit down for an hour. We'd actually like to sit down for more than an hour, but we'll limit it to an hour if that's what you're comfortable with. We would like to talk to you. We're talking to Donald Trump. We're talking to J.D. Vance. Please, Madam Vice President, let us talk to you as well. And she said no. She could have had 2 hours with Joe Rogan. She could have had 2 hours to sit down and talk about abortion, talk about January 6th, talk about, price gouging or whatever else it is, fracking, whatever. They could have had 1 2-hour fracking conversation. She opted not to. Instead, she went for 2 minutes on Saturday Night Live, which could now put her friends at NBC in jeopardy with the FCC. And, let's be honest, didn't get nearly the reach that a Joe Rogan interview would have with the audience that she's looking to target. And we know that she's looking to target the Joe Rogan audience because her husband, I almost said her wife, which isn't that far off. Her husband, Doug Emhoff, Low T Dougie was on television talking about how young men are being fooled. They're being conned into thinking that Donald Trump and Joe Rogan are cool.
What I talk to young men about who might be taken by the fun side of Donald Trump, such as it is, the dancing, the going to the wrestling matches, going on the podcasts, and trying to portray himself as someone who he really is. And I think Cardi B called this out and said it's just all a hustle. Mm-hmm. And so what I'm trying to implore young men in particular to do the research. He's not your friend. The policies that he's talking about will not help them in the economy. The policies that he's talking about have nothing to do with them. So
there's so much to unpack with this. First of all, when you start quoting Cardi B as your political authority, you've already lost. As Cardi B pointed out, it's just a hustle. He's just hustling these young boys. You know what? Young men, when I talk to young men, which, by the way, I would not allow Doug Emhoff near any young men. If you have a young man in your house, here's what you don't do. Don't let your baby near Joe Biden. Don't let your young man near Tampon Tim or Low T Doug Emhoff. I'm just saying that's just a helpful hint, parent to parent. But he goes, I talk to these young men and they're fooled. They're fooled by the dancing. I guess the YMCA thing that Donald Trump does, they're fooled by that. They're fooled. I tell them just because Donald Trump goes to these wrestling matches and goes on these podcasts doesn't mean he's not for you. That doesn't mean he's for you. He's actually against you. How is he against you? How are Donald Trump's economic policies bad for young men? Donald Trump's economic policies are good for everybody. Young men, old men, young women, old women, black women, white women, Latino women, all of them. Every single person in this country had a better life under Donald Trump than they did under Joe Biden. Even Joe Biden paid less in taxes than he does under Joe Biden. Think about that. Joe Biden, Jill Biden, Hunter Biden, all the Bidens, Ashley Biden, they were all better off under Donald Trump's economy. They paid way more in taxes under Joe Biden. They paid way more for gas money under Joe Biden. They paid way more for everything under Joe Biden than they did under Donald Trump. So if Joe Biden's worse off under Joe Biden, all these young men are too. And Doug Emhoff's just lying. And the economy, no matter how they try to spin it, is the number one issue. And Mark Kelly, who, let's be honest, probably should have been the vice presidential pick because Josh Shapiro is just way too Jewish, apparently, for Kamala Harris and the Democrats. And Tim Walz is just way too weird. They should have picked Mark Kelly from Arizona. It would have maybe given them an edge. But Mark Kelly was on with Shannon Bream on Fox News, and they were talking about the economy, and listen to how she hounded him on it.
So let's talk more broadly, though, about the economy, because there are people now who say that they're having a tough time struggling to put things together, 2 or 3 jobs to keep themselves going. Horrible jobs report on Friday, and people want to point to a lot of different things, a couple of big storms, but 12,000 jobs created, and those were government jobs. The private sector actually lost jobs in the last jobs report, and both August and September were revised downward for more than 112,000 jobs that were reported to happen that didn't happen. That follows earlier in the summer when we were told that the previous March to March, 818,000 jobs that were reported as created weren't created. So people are saying my personal situation, the way that I vote is going to be impacted by what I'm experiencing, and it's not good. And they don't feel like they've heard enough. Even some Democrats will say from the vice president an articulation of why she didn't do things differently under this administration and how she's going to make concrete changes. So voters are left with that.
Simply comes down to the fact that she has a plan.
Oh, by the way, Mark Kelly got lost. Shannon Bream peppered him with so many numbers. The dude, he's an astronaut. He flew into space. I get it. He's a very smart man. He can handle a lot of stressful situations. Going into space and coming back safely, much easier for Mark Kelly than sitting down with Shannon Bream and talking about the economy. Much easier for Mark Kelly than sitting down with Shannon Bream and trying to keep track of all these phony numbers that the Democrats keep coming up with in the jobs report. We created all these jobs. Those are government jobs. Those aren't real jobs because Elon Musk is about to get rid of them when Donald Trump becomes president. The private sector jobs went down. And fun fact, if you want a strong economy, if you want a strong country, if you want a democracy, a republic, if you will, that is ingrained in capitalism and truly offering better incentives for every single person under its, tent, then you want fewer government jobs and you want more private sector jobs. Why is that? Very simple. Because government jobs are paid for by taxes. And if you have more government jobs, that means people are paying more in taxes. If you have fewer government jobs, you don't have to pay those people as much because there are fewer of them working for the government. And guess what? People's tax burden goes down. Also, if there are fewer government jobs, those people go into the private sector. They get jobs that are taxed, and the government gets more income tax. The way you make more money, because the government makes nothing. They don't make anything. They don't make jack squat. They make a lot of trouble for a lot of people. The government, they don't produce anything. They don't create anything. They don't sell anything. The government has the biggest budget. They spend more money than anyone else on the planet Earth, and they have no income. Their income is taking a large portion of your income. And if they want to spend more money, they don't make more product. They don't book more calls. If I want to make more money, you know what I have to do? I have to do more podcasts. If I want to make more money, I have to go out and sell more advertising. If I want to make more money, I have to write another book. And I have to market it. I have to publish it. And I have to put time and effort and energy into creating a thing that solves a problem that someone will exchange money with me for. My Christmas book, for example, here, we haven't yet, but we're about to start selling The Untold Story of Christmas again. What problem does this solve? Well, the problem is I need to get a book for my child or my grandson or my niece or whatever, and they have all the other Christmas books. Oh, here's one they don't have. This would be a great gift. Mark Kaye came up with a solution to my problem. I will give him money. He will give me the book. That's how capitalism works. The government doesn't do that. The government takes money from you and spends it on crap that you don't want them to, but that benefits them. And so the best way to build an economy is to lower the number of government jobs and increase the number of private sector jobs. Because if you increase the number of private sector jobs, that's more people paying taxes. Don't charge the people more tax money. That's bad. That destroys the economy. Create more taxpayers. If everyone were paying 25% in income tax and they created twice as many income taxpayers, all of our problems would be solved. And if at the same time we simultaneously reduce the size of the government, forget about it. That's cush. But that's not what Kamala Harris does. That's not what Joe Biden does. That's not what Democrats do. They do the opposite. They increase the size of the government, they reduce the size of the private sector, and they take more money from hardworking Americans, which in turn makes everything worse because you don't have enough money to spend on other stuff, and then more businesses go out of business. But that's okay with the government. They just take those jobs and they federalize them. And that's really all they want anyway. It's called communism, and it's horrible. Let's check in quickly with Donald Trump and see what he's up to in North Carolina, where
it was bigger than practically all of their plans put together. It would have devastated them. And I made the statement very strongly, and that was about it. Sort of forgot about it. And I saw him like a couple of weeks ago in the audience, and I said, would you do me a favor? Tell that gentleman, his name is John, I want to see him. He builds auto plants, the biggest, I think he's the biggest guy, biggest in the world. He's very good at it. And he said, comes backstage, I said, hey, John, how's that big plant that you're building or getting ready to build in Mexico, owned by China, how is it? Oh, sir, that's been dropped. I said, what? He said, they dropped it quietly last week. They're not going to build the plant because they think you're going to become president and you're going to put tariffs on the cars that come across. And they've decided that they'd lose a fortune, and they've dropped the project. How about that?
How about it? Look at that. That's great news. That's great news. When you have captains of industry saying Donald Trump's going to be president, then that's a good sign. When you have people dropping their plans to build plants in Mexico because they believe they're going to get tariffed out the wazoo by Donald Trump when he becomes president, that's a good sign. When you have John Fetterman saying Kamala Harris probably can't win Pennsylvania, that's a good sign. When you have Kamala Harris browbeating NBC into breaking the law to allow her to be on there to push votes in Pennsylvania at the last minute after she's already pulled funding from North Carolina and Nevada, that's a good sign. Tim Scott from South Carolina, senator, pardon me. He's a happy, optimistic guy, and he was being happy and optimistic on CNN.
Dana, we're looking forward to a very good day on Tuesday night without any question. I'm excited to see that the battleground states that we've just talked about are all leaning towards Trump. So the good news is we will have a fair election, and Donald Trump will be our next president. I look at the facts that in Wisconsin, when I was in Wisconsin just recently, the voters are heading in our direction. And the good news is 2 out of 3 voters want to vote in person in Wisconsin, even though they have mail-in ballots. You just showed a stat a few minutes ago where 400,000 votes swing towards Republicans in Pennsylvania. You take the number of Democrats not voting and the number of Republicans who have registered, and that's before you add on top of that the 300,000 Jewish voters who find themselves being polarized away from the Democrat Party. This is going to be a very good election, and we, the people, will make that decision.
Yeah, and hope now a lot of people, and people write me all the time. In fact, every single day, I get it from everyone. I get it from my wife. I get it from my kids. I get it from their friends. I get it from people that DM me. I get it from people in our ACEs community, which I'll share with you in just a minute. And they're all concerned. In fact, people are always like, "What?" One of our good friends, and I'm not going to say she's a conspiracy theorist, but she's one of the biggest conspiracy theorists I know. I invited her to our election day party because we're having a big party. I'm sure you've heard about it by now. If you haven't yet heard about our big election night watch party at Sneakers in Jacksonville, allow me to tell you very quickly about our election night watch party at Sneakers in Jacksonville. We are having an election night watch party at Sneakers in Jacksonville. This is going to be fun. We were going to have there's sneakers. We're going to have a whole side of it. We're going to have a setup where I'm going to be doing a live stream. For those of you that enjoy this program, guess what? We're going to be live streaming for at least 4 hours at Sneakers. It starts at 7 p.m. There's drink specials, there's free appetizers, little bites, and while supplies last. We've got some VIP tables, which are all sold out, by the way, but it's going to be so much fun. And if you want to come and watch the results in a fun atmosphere, if you want to party down, if you want to watch us announce the states as they come in, then this is the place to go. If you can't make it, if you're nowhere near Jacksonville, Florida, or Jacksonville Beach, Florida, if you're watching from Minnesota or Oregon or Canada or Texas, we have people from all over. And I appreciate we have thousands of people that watch this show and listen to the podcast, and they're all over the country. They're all over the world. You can watch right here, wherever you are right now. If you're watching on Facebook, if you're watching on YouTube, if you're on Rumble, we will be live on all of those platforms. So make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you subscribe to whatever it is. Make sure you're subscribed to whatever platform you're watching. Make sure that you are setting the notifications. We want to make sure that you have the notifications set, and that way, not only will you be able to watch us, but you'll get notified when we go live. So in case you forget, you're like, "Oh, right, I can now tune in." And that's going to be a fantastic treat. It's going to be so much fun, and I just can't wait for it. And I'm optimistic. I am. But a lot of people ask me, they always say, "Look, I'm sorry, my conspiracy theorist friend." I said, "Why don't you come to our party on Tuesday night?" She goes, "What party?" I said, "We're having an election night watch party." And she goes, "You think there's going to be an election?" That's what she always says. She goes, I said, "I think there is." She goes, "Okay." She goes, "If there's an election, I'll come to your party, but I don't hold out a lot of hope." And I said, "All right, well, that's fair enough. If there's an election," and then I always go, "What do you think? Why do you think there's not going to be a happen?" She goes, "I can't even get into it now, but trust me, Tuesday morning, it's going down." And I'm like, "All right, well, Tuesday night, if it doesn't go down, come to the party. We'll have free apps and Tito's vodka special." She goes, "I'll be there if there's an election." I said, "Great." So, but I get that a lot from a lot of people. They're constantly writing me saying, how do we keep it from happening? How do we keep this election fair and free? And there's a lot of things that, I'm going to be honest with you, point me in the direction that there's no way, the whole too big to rig narrative. I feel like this is happening. I feel like there's so much data. And we're talking about pre-election data. There's so much data that there's such a paper trail of Republican enthusiasm and voting and registration. I mean, the registration numbers for Republicans alone are huge. The Republican registration numbers alone there's no way, if Donald Trump loses any of these swing states, that the data of Republican registration and Republican early voting, there's no way that it's going to correlate. Republicans aren't registering in massive numbers in places like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, North Carolina, and Virginia. They're not going out there rushing out to register to vote for Kamala Harris. That's not happening in the Republican Party. Those people are going out and they are registering to vote so that they can vote for Donald Trump. And they're not going out and early voting and standing in line early and casting their in-person ballots early for Kamala Harris. They're doing that for Donald Trump. And the numbers back that up. And it's almost to the point where if any one of those states goes blue, you have to stop and say, wait a minute. Let's look at this. There's this many Republican voters. There's this many people registered. There's this many early voters. How on earth? It's going to be mathematically impossible, I believe, for any shenanigans to be validated. Not only that, we've got lawyers on the ground. We've spoken with Laura Trump several times. I tried to get her back on the show before Election Day, but there's an election and she's out campaigning. And Michael Whatley, co-chair. And we've talked to other insiders at the RNC. There are more lawyers on the payroll for the RNC than there have been at any time in history. There are more ground operatives. There are more volunteers. There are more Republican poll workers, poll watchers. There are more Republicans involved in the political process than there ever have been before. You've got massive organizations spending millions of dollars making sure Republicans get to the polls on Election Day. Buses of people will be brought in, people who are low propensity voters. They will be voting for Donald Trump. And there is a good chance that on Tuesday night, if Donald Trump wins, states that nobody saw coming, states like Virginia, where he was last night. Donald Trump rolled into Virginia, Salem, Virginia. And he goes, look, I'm here in Salem, Virginia, and I'm here because we're going to win Virginia. He was very confident about it. They should win Virginia. There's no reason Virginia should be voting for Kamala Harris. Virginia is a red state with red state morals and values. They've been targeted by the federal government. The parents there have been targeted by the federal government. They've had their fair share of aberrations. And Glenn Youngkin is their governor, good governor, popular governor, Republican governor. He said he's promoted Donald Trump. He's campaigned with Donald Trump. He said Donald Trump is the person we need. His name was floated for president, for crying out loud. That's how much people in Virginia love Glenn Youngkin. There's no reason why Donald Trump shouldn't win that state. He's going to win North Carolina, and North Carolina borders Virginia. He's going to win West Virginia, and West Virginia borders Virginia. He's going to win Tennessee, and I think there's like a mile. I have to check the map, but I think there's like a little tiny bit of Tennessee that also borders Virginia. It's the same people. The only thing that would keep Donald Trump from winning Virginia is that Northern Virginia, D.C. suburb area. Although, look, let's be honest. If you worked for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, because that's what if you're a government worker and you work for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, would you, think about this. If you work for the government, you have the opportunity to fire your boss. Who doesn't dream of firing their boss? You're telling me every government worker is so satisfied with the way the government's being run that they're just blindly going to go vote for Kamala Harris because they think that she's going to be the better executive in charge of their careers? I, for a fact, know of a government worker who has voted for Donald Trump already and will not be voting for Kamala Harris. And they live in the suburbs of D.C. And so you can't take it for granted that that's going to be a blue state. And if Donald Trump wins Virginia, and if he can win New Hampshire, which I believe he's going to win New Hampshire, man, there's something about New Hampshire. New Hampshire has been dying to go red, I believe, for decades now, and they finally have the excuse to do it. And they finally have a good, solid leadership in place. They have a good, solid message. They're fed up. They're fed up with the liberal BS, and that's 4 electoral votes. But man, when it's this close, 4 electoral votes is all you need. It may come down to 2 electoral votes. New Hampshire could be the deciding factor in this election on election night. And then don't even get me started on Minnesota. People say I'm crazy about Minnesota. The more I see Tim Walz, the more I think those people, they're over him. They're over that guy. Minnesota, they've got to be so far over Tim Walz. I couldn't even imagine. But despite all of this confidence, you still need to do a couple of things. You need to vote. Forget thank God the polls are done. We won't be talking about polls anymore. There will be no new polls. This last bogus Iowa poll, the only reason I talked about that was because I wanted you to realize it's a piece of propaganda and not a proper poll. It's a piece of content meant to psychologically change the balance of power or get the Donald Trump campaign to react in a way that the Democrats would like him to react, pull money from here, shuffle money around there, cancel an event in Pennsylvania and instead opt for one in Des Moines. Whatever it is they're trying to do, it's failing miserably. It's a lie. That's the only reason we bring it up. But there's no more polls. The polls are done. We head right into Tuesday, and it's whatever information we have right now. That's the information that we're voting on, and you've got to vote. You've got to go out and vote. You've got to get other people to vote. You've got to make sure that if you have to bribe someone into getting off their butts and going, if you got to say, look, go vote. I'll buy you a coffee. Go vote. I'll take you to lunch. Go vote. And beers are on me after work. Whatever it is, get these people to the polls to vote. And then the other thing you have to do, which you should be doing anyway, is pray. Because America needs prayers. Donald Trump needs prayers. we need prayers for this election. In fact, I went to church today. I've been to church. Fun fact, I went to church Friday. I went to church today. I think I'm going to church on Tuesday. I'm at church a lot. I'm like a church guy. But I went to church today. My son was playing the organ, and we were sitting there, and I was listening to the homily in the Catholic, just like the sermon. And the priest, they don't basically come right out and say, vote for Trump or you're going to hell. I kind of wish they would. Like, if I were a priest, I would have, for the last 6 months, been up in that pulpit preaching fire and brimstone. For the last 6 months, would have been like, you better all vote for Trump or you're going right to hell, and there's no stopping in purgatory. It's just a straight ticket. The Bible says this and the Bible says that, and abortion is murder and blah, 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 blah. And I would have been, that's probably why I'm not a priest. Also, there's something about like cussing and, celibacy. Anyway, there's a whole bunch of reasons. But anyway, so he gets up there today and he's given the homily and he says, and I quote because it struck me, he said, As a Christian, it is impossible for you to separate your spirituality from your politics. And that is 100. That's what I've been telling people all the time. That's why Joe Biden can't be a Catholic. That's why Nancy Pelosi can't be taking communion. These people spiritually are not Catholics. They believe in abortion. They promote abortion. They vote for abortion. They go out there and they rally for abortion. They are not spiritually Catholic. Politically, they're whatever they are. They're Democrats, but you can't separate the two. If you're a Christian, God is the king. God is the ruler. God is what you're here for. Your job every single day and whatever you do is to praise and bring glory to God. And that includes when you work, when you speak, your actions toward other people, your charitable works, your tithing, whatever it is. And most importantly, your vote. Because yes, you have a right to vote in this country if you're a citizen, but you have a moral obligation to use that vote to promote and to please God. You need to know the word of God. You need to know what God believes is right. You need to know what God wants you to do with your life to make his glory known throughout the land, to help and to love thy neighbor. You need to make sure that whatever you do is not for your own glory, but for the glory of the one true God. And that includes your vote. And that's about as close as he gets to saying, go out and vote for Donald Trump or you're all going to hell. But it's true. So what I did today in our ACES community was I put together a list of some of my favorite Bible passages and Bible passages that I believe are reflective and are optimistic and are encouraging and are inspirational for Donald Trump and the election on Tuesday. And I threw in there a couple of other prayers and I put it right in our ACES community. And if you're not a member of our ACES community, it's free to join now. You just go to, there's a link in the description of this video, or you can go to InsideAces.com, InsideAces.com. And right here in the free stuff area, you'll see this. Look, we got some free stuff. Yesterday, I posted the list of my real trusted news sources. Today, I listed prayers and Bible readings for Trump's victory. There's a whole bunch of them. But if you go to ACES and you click on that free stuff tab, then you can access this. And we're adding new stuff every single day. There's going to be something new in there tomorrow. There's going to be something new in there the next day after that. All great resources for American conservatives. It's American Conservative Empowerment Society. That's what ACES stands for. That's what we came up with, and we love it. And the community's grown by leaps and bounds. We've got hundreds of like-minded, conservative, Christian, capitalist, patriots, and Americans in this group. And they all want, that's Donald Trump and St. Michael the Archangel fighting together to save this country and to save the world, really, and to save you and your soul. And so I urge you when this video is done, which will be in like 30 seconds, go there to ACES. Join up in the American Conservative Empowerment Society. Again, it's InsideAces.com. InsideAces.com, or you can click the link in the description of this video. Donald Trump, I believe, is still speaking because that guy, like I said, he's a machine. He never stops. He never stops at all. Let's listen in one more time.
Talk about this was the other night. They'd ask her a question, say, Donald Trump did this, Donald Trump did that. All she can say is, Donald Trump.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight, I will speak about Donald Trump. Donald Trump, 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 Trump.
That's great. That's fantastic. Bravo.
What the hell did I have to do with it? That's all she talked. What are you going to do for the economy? Donald Trump, man, is she bad?
Oh, that's hilarious. Hold on, let me
How
bring
about 60 Minutes? You see that? Where 60 Minutes defrauded
the American people. Yeah. Okay, listen, I got to wrap it up. But that was, I'm going to pull that, and we're going to play that again tomorrow. Tomorrow, noon Eastern, 11 Central, we will be live once again. Make sure that you're subscribed. Make sure you're setting notifications because, like I said, we publish videos today too. In fact, let me just mention this to you real quick. Let me go back here, and I'm going to pull up. In fact, I think I posted it here in Aces. Yeah. What earlier today when this fake Iowa polls thing came out, I was like, I can't wait around. I got to make sure that people know about this thing. So look what I did. I did a video here, and this was this morning. It's available now. This was not a live stream. This was a video that I posted, and it took off. It's got like 16,000 people have watched this video. So make sure that you're not only subscribed, but you're setting notifications because, like I said, there's constantly content coming out. This is a little Inceptionist, so I'm going to come back here. There's content coming out all the time. And we want to make sure that you get it. But we'll be live tomorrow at noon Eastern, 11 Central. We are going to be live on Tuesday, noon Eastern, 11 Central. And then our election night watch party at Sneakers in Jack's Beach. That happens on Tuesday night, starting at 7 p.m. How late are we going to go? I don't know. I'd like to stay awake, and I'd like to keep broadcasting until we know who the winner is. But on the off chance that it takes longer than we expect, we will not be broadcasting past 2 a.m. because there's ordinances and they got to shut down the bar. But that should be, I would definitely urge you to make time to join us on Tuesday night for the election night watch party. And like I said, vote. You have to vote. That's your weapon. That's your tool. Vote, pray. In fact, I would do it this way. I would pray, I would vote, and then I would go home and I would pray some more. Because prayer and voting are the two things that we have that are going to put us over the top. Prayer and your vote. Those are the weapons that God and the founding fathers have given you to fight back against tyranny. You've got God on your back, and you've got all of our founding fathers right there holding your hand when you go into that voting booth. And you've got to show up, you've got to go in, and you've got to make the choice. You've got to make the choice to do the thing that we've been begging you to, that we've been talking about doing, that we've been preparing for. We have been waiting for this week. Tomorrow is election week, Monday and then Tuesday, and then God knows what's going to happen after that. But this is what we've been waiting for 4 years. Ever since election night 2020, we have been waiting for election night 2024, and it is so close. And now's the time for us to do what we've been training for, what we've been talking about, what we've been working toward. Pray, vote, and save the republic. I gotta go pull that Donald